Imagine placing a bet, not with a few dollars, but with 44 billion. A bet so large it could reshape a town, challenge a global monopoly, and navigate the treacherous waters of a new Cold War. Now, what if the chips you were betting with weren't plastic, but silicon? And the table wasn't in Vegas, but in a small, unassuming town in central Texas. This is the reality for Samsung. The South Korean giant is pouring over $40 billion into a colossal semiconductor complex in Taylor, Texas. On the surface, it's a story about bringing manufacturing back to America, a response to a global supply chain crisis, and a government eager to write checks. But underneath, it's a far more complex and risky game. So, what is Samsung really doing in Texas? Is this a government-subsidized land grab? A desperate attempt to keep pace with a rival that seems perpetually a step ahead? Or is it one of the most calculated geopolitical hedges in modern corporate history? The answer, it turns out, is all of the above. This isn't just about building a factory. It's about survival in a world that is fracturing along technological fault lines. It's a high-stakes game of poker where the players are superpowers, and Samsung is trying to make sure it holds a winning hand, no matter which way the cards fall. To understand the Texas bet, you first have to understand Samsung. It's not just a company, it's a sprawling Korean conglomerate, a chaebol, that makes everything from your phone to the screen you're watching this on, to the memory chips inside both. This unique structure is key to deciphering its grand strategy in the heart of America. In the highly specialized world of semiconductors, companies typically fall into one of two camps. There are fabless companies like Nvidia or Qualcomm, which are brilliant at designing chips but don't actually make them. And then there are pure-play foundries, like the undisputed king, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, which do nothing but manufacture chips for others. TSMC doesn't design its own chips. Its entire business model is built on being a neutral, reliable manufacturing partner for everyone else. Samsung is different. It's what the industry calls an integrated device manufacturer, or IDM. An IDM both designs and manufactures its own chips. This means Samsung is, in many ways, its own biggest customer. The powerful Exynos processors found in many of its flagship Galaxy smartphones are not just designed by Samsung. They are often fabricated in Samsung's own facilities, a practice known as vertical integration. Historically, this vertical integration has been a formidable strength. It grants Samsung complete control over its production process, from the initial design concept to the final silicon wafer. This tight coupling allows for optimizations that are difficult for fabless companies to achieve. More importantly, it provides a massive, stable, and predictable internal demand for its own foundries. When the consumer electronics division needs millions of chips for a new phone launch, Samsung Foundry has a built-in, high-volume customer. This insulates it to a degree from the wild cyclicality of the semiconductor market and allows it to justify the mind-boggling expense of building new fabs. But this IDM model, Samsung's greatest strength, is also its Achilles heel. It creates a fundamental and unavoidable conflict of interest. Imagine you're a company like Google or Tesla, looking for a foundry to produce your next-generation AI chip. You could go to TSMC, a neutral party that has no competing products. Or you could go to Samsung, which runs not only a foundry, but also one of the world's largest electronics businesses that competes directly with you in multiple sectors. The question inevitably arises: if manufacturing capacity becomes constrained, will Samsung prioritize its own lucrative Galaxy phone chips over your order? This persistent question of trust has been a primary reason why Samsung's foundry business, despite its immense technological prowess and capital, has perpetually trailed TSMC. Recognizing this perception issue, Samsung even spun off its foundry business into a separate unit in 2017. But the shadow of conflict of interest remains a significant hurdle in attracting top-tier external customers. This strategic context is crucial, but so is history. This massive Texas expansion is not Samsung's first rodeo in the Lone Star State. The company has deep, established roots there, Its American manufacturing journey began in Austin in 1996, with the construction of its first fab just a year later. Over nearly 3 decades, Samsung Austin Semiconductor has evolved dramatically, investing over $18 billion into its campus on East Palmer Lane. It started by producing DRAM memory chips, then shifted to NAND flash, and in 2017 officially became a foundry, opening its doors to external customers. This long-standing presence in Austin is a critical and often overlooked strategic asset. Building and operating a semiconductor fab is one of the most complex industrial undertakings on the planet. It requires navigating a labyrinth of local and federal regulations, constructing a sophisticated local supply chain for gases, chemicals, and equipment, and cultivating a highly skilled workforce. Samsung has been mastering this in Texas for almost 30 years. This gives the company an enormous home field advantage compared to its rival, TSMC, which is building its Arizona fab as a relative newcomer to large-scale American manufacturing. Samsung understands the Texan political landscape, the labor market, and the logistical challenges of operating in the region. This pre-existing ecosystem makes their new $40 billion bet in the neighboring town of Taylor less of a risky greenfield project and more of a massive calculated expansion from a well-established base. A $40 billion investment doesn't just materialize out of thin air. It is the result of a carefully choreographed dance, a Texas two-step, between a global corporation seeking favorable terms and multiple layers of government eager to land a transformative economic project. Samsung played its cards masterfully, leveraging its massive investment to secure one of the largest incentive packages in American history. The move that got the world's attention came from Washington, D.C. In April 2024, the U.S. Department of Commerce, under the banner of the CHIPS and Science Act, announced that Samsung would receive up to $6.4 billion in direct federal funding. This monumental grant was the catalyst. It transformed what was initially announced in 2021 as a $17 billion project into the colossal $40+ billion regional semiconductor hub it is today. The CHIPS Act funding wasn't just a subsidy. It was a signal from the US government that it was all in on bringing advanced semiconductor manufacturing back to American shores, and Samsung was to be a key partner in that mission. But the federal money was only the opening bid. To win the fierce competition for the plant, Texas and its local municipalities rolled out the red carpet, assembling what the Austin American-Statesman described as the biggest corporate incentive package in the state's history. This local package is a complex web of tax breaks and grants collectively valued at over $1.18 billion. Breaking down this staggering figure reveals how deep the partnership runs. The largest portion of the local incentives, a staggering $314 million, comes from the Taylor Independent School District, which agreed to a 10-year property tax abatement under a program known as Chapter 313. Williamson County and the City of Taylor followed with their own multi-decade agreements, rebating or abating over 90% of Samsung's property taxes in the crucial first decade of operations. On top of these direct tax breaks, public funds are being used to pay for hundreds of millions of dollars in supporting infrastructure, from new roads, like the aptly named Samsung Highway, to the extension of water and sewer lines essential for the fab's operation. This arrangement, however, is not a simple blank check. It's a performance-based contract, a set of golden handcuffs that creates a deep and potentially fraught interdependency between the corporate giant and the local community. The tax incentives are tied to specific milestones for capital investment and job creation. If Samsung doesn't meet its targets, the value of the incentives can be reduced. This dynamic has already been tested. In response to construction delays, the City of Taylor recently amended its agreement with Samsung, capping its reimbursement obligations for plan reviews and inspections, and tying them to a new, stricter mandate that Samsung must have at least $2 billion worth of equipment installed and commissioned by the end of 2026. This reveals the underlying tension of such a massive deal. Samsung needs the billions in incentives to make a $40 billion investment financially viable. But the city of Taylor and Williamson County have now tied their economic futures to Samsung's success. The project is projected to inject billions into the local economy. The Austin and Taylor sites combined contributed nearly $27 billion in 2023 alone, and create thousands of high-tech jobs. If the project falters, it would leave a catastrophic hole in the region's economic planning and tax base. Furthermore, watchdog groups like Good Jobs First have pointed out a classic dilemma in these megadeals. The property tax abatements are so generous, especially in the first decade, that existing taxpayers will likely have to shoulder the costs of the increased demand for public services that such a massive project creates. Much of the new tax revenue generated within the specially created Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, TIRZ, flows back to Samsung to reimburse its infrastructure costs, rather than into the city's general fund to pay for things like schools, roads, and first responders. While the community benefits from an explosion in sales tax revenue and new jobs, the core tax structure is heavily weighted in Samsung's favor for decades to come, a detail often lost in the celebratory headlines. To truly grasp the strategic brilliance of the Texas hedge, we need to look 8,000 miles east of Austin to the city of Xi'an, China. Here, Samsung operates a sprawling manufacturing complex that is the crown jewel of its memory chip empire. This facility is a behemoth, responsible for producing up to 40% of Samsung's entire global output of NAND flash memory chips, the storage found in everything from smartphones to data centers. For years, this Chinese production base was a strategic asset, offering scale and cost efficiency. Today, it has become a monumental liability. The world has changed. The escalating technological Cold War between the United States and China has placed companies like Samsung in an impossible position. The US government, through a series of increasingly stringent export controls, has made its objective clear: to cripple China's ability to produce or acquire the advanced semiconductors needed for next-generation technologies, especially artificial intelligence. These rules, enforced by the Commerce Department, not only restrict the sale of advanced chips themselves, but also the sophisticated manufacturing equipment required to make them. The US has effectively weaponized its central position in the global semiconductor supply chain. For Samsung, the consequences have been direct and painful. While the company, along with other foreign chip makers operating in China, has received temporary waivers to continue importing some US equipment, the threat of these exemptions being revoked hangs like the sword of Damocles. The uncertainty is a killer. In a recent earnings report, Samsung explicitly blamed a shocking 56% plunge in its operating profit on these US restrictions. The controls forced the company to write down the value of unsold inventory and run its expensive Chinese fabs at painfully low capacity, devastating its bottom line. This is the very heart of the Texas hedge. Samsung is a South Korean company caught in the crossfire between its two most critical markets. On one side is China, a vital manufacturing base and a massive consumer market. On the other is the United States, its most important source of high-end customers, companies like Google, Tesla, and AMD, and now its primary benefactor through the CHIPS Act. The Taylor, Texas plant is Samsung's answer to this geopolitical dilemma. It is a geopolitical shield. It creates a secure, resilient, onshore supply chain for its most advanced logic chips, the high-performance brains essential for AI, 5G, and automotive applications, that is completely insulated from the political and logistical risks threatening its memory chip operations in China. This move allows Samsung to walk into the boardrooms of its American clients and offer an ironclad guarantee: your most critical, cutting-edge components will be designed and manufactured in America, with the full backing of the US government, free from the threat of export controls, shipping disruptions, or a potential military conflict in the Taiwan Strait. This strategy is more nuanced than simply moving out of China. A surface-level analysis might suggest Samsung is abandoning its Chinese operations. The reality is far more sophisticated. The company is bifurcating its global supply chain, splitting it along product lines and geopolitical risk profiles. Commodity-like products such as NAND flash memory, which are less subject to the most severe export controls, can continue to be produced in Xi'an to serve the vast Asian market. Meanwhile, leading-edge logic chips, which are at the epicenter of the US-China tech war and are indispensable for American tech giants, are being decisively onshored to Texas. This is a complex strategy designed to maintain a strong foothold in both of the world's superpowers by tailoring its manufacturing footprint to the specific product and the prevailing political climate. This strategic realignment is not entirely voluntary. The CHIPS and Science Act, while offering billions in subsidies, comes with significant strings attached. Its guardrail provisions explicitly prohibit companies that receive US federal funding from expanding or upgrading their advanced semiconductor facilities in countries of concern, most notably China. This is a feature, not a bug. The US government is using the powerful lure of subsidies to compel companies to align their technological futures with American strategic interests. By accepting the $6.4 billion, Samsung has made a binding choice. It has committed to making America the home of its future generations of advanced logic technology, all while attempting to preserve its massive, and now much riskier, memory business in China. The sprawling complex rising from the Texas soil is the physical manifestation of this forced strategic decision. Building in Texas is not just a defensive geopolitical maneuver, it is a direct, offensive assault on Samsung's ultimate nemesis, TSMC. For the better part of a decade, the advanced semiconductor foundry market has not been a competition. It has been a one-man show, and that man is TSMC. The numbers tell a brutal story of dominance. In the first quarter of 2025, market analysis showed TSMC commanding a staggering 67.6% of the global foundry market. Samsung, its closest competitor, was left in the dust, with its market share plummeting to a meager 7.7%. This isn't a recent development, it's a long-term trend. In the first quarter of 2019, the gap was already large, with TSMC at 48.1% and Samsung at 19.1%. By the fourth quarter of 2024, that gap had widened into a chasm, 67.1% for TSMC versus just 8.1% for Samsung. The revenue disparity is even more shocking, with TSMC often earning billions more in a single quarter than Samsung's entire semiconductor division combined. Why has the gap become so vast? According to the legendary founder of TSMC, Morris Chang, Samsung's problems are fundamentally technical. For years, Samsung has been plagued by disappointingly low yields on its most advanced manufacturing processes. In semiconductor manufacturing, yield is the all-important metric representing the percentage of usable, defect-free chips on each silicon wafer. A low yield means higher production costs and, more critically, an unreliable supply, two factors that are poison to high volume, demanding customers like Apple or Nvidia. The industry is littered with cautionary tales. When Qualcomm, a major chip designer, gave Samsung a chance to produce its Snapdragon Gen 1 processor, the chip was beset by performance and efficiency issues. For the next generation, Qualcomm switched to TSMC, and the problems vanished. Incidents like these have shattered customer trust, a currency that is incredibly difficult to earn back. This reality directly impacted the plans for Taylor. The fab was originally slated to produce chips on Samsung's 4nm process node. But this plan collided with two harsh truths. First, Samsung's 4nm process was struggling with yield issues. Second, its rival was already miles ahead. TSMC was already mass-producing 4nm chips for the likes of Apple, AMD, and Nvidia at its new Arizona facility, and its production capacity was reportedly sold out for years to come. By the time the Taylor fab would be ready, its 4-nanometer technology would be a generation behind, and there was little to no customer demand for it. A brand new, multi-billion-dollar fab with no customers is a corporate catastrophe. So, Samsung made a high-risk, bet-the-farm pivot. The Taylor plant will no longer aim for 4 nanometers. Instead, it will be retooled for the cutting-edge 2-nanometer process. This is an act of strategic desperation. Unable to compete on today's technology where it has already lost, Samsung is attempting to leapfrog the current generation and meet TSMC on the battlefield of tomorrow's technology. It is a massive gamble designed to prove to the world and to potential customers that it can finally match or even beat the king on the next technological frontier. This Foundry war is about more than just winning a single customer. It's a war for entire ecosystems. TSMC's power stems not just from its manufacturing prowess, but from the vast network of electronic design automation, EDA companies, intellectual property, IP providers, and advanced packaging partners that have built their tools and services around TSMC's processes. When a company like Apple designs a new chip, it is designing it specifically for a TSMC process, using a suite of tools optimized for TSMC. Switching to a different foundry is an incredibly complex and expensive undertaking. By consistently delivering on its promises, TSMC has locked in this powerful ecosystem. Samsung's challenge, therefore, is not merely to build a better transistor. It must build a competing ecosystem of partners who trust it enough to invest their own time and resources into designing for Samsung's platform. The Taylor fab is a bold attempt to build a US-based anchor for such an ecosystem, but it is starting from a profound and deeply entrenched disadvantage. A $40 billion bet is only as good as its execution, and on that front, there are serious cracks appearing in the foundation of Samsung's Texas project. A grand strategy on paper can easily crumble under the weight of operational reality, and for the Taylor fab, the warning signs are flashing red. The most visible problem has been the timeline. It has slipped and slipped again. The plant was originally announced with a target production start in the second half of 2024. That target was soon pushed to 2025, and now the company officially states it plans to be operational by 2026. Official construction filings submitted in South Korea indicate the building completion deadline has been moved to the end of October 2025, making a 2026 start the best-case scenario. The reasons for these delays are deeply concerning. The most alarming, cited by multiple sources across the supply chain and in financial analysis, is a stark lack of customers. A chip supply chain executive bluntly told Nikkei Asia, "Local demand for chips isn't particularly strong, and the process nodes Samsung planned several years ago no longer meet with current customer needs." This has led to a costly wait-and-see approach. Samsung is reportedly hesitant to proceed with the equipping phase, the installation of the incredibly expensive and delicate chip-making machinery, such as extreme ultraviolet, EUV, lithography tools, until it has firm orders in hand. This customer problem is a direct symptom of Samsung's deeper, persistent yield curse. The company's ongoing struggles to achieve high, stable manufacturing yields on its most advanced nodes make potential clients wary. Reports have claimed that yields on Samsung's pioneering gate-all-around (GAA) transistor technology, the very technology that will be used for the 2-nanometer process in Taylor, are significantly lower than what TSMC achieves, with some estimates putting them in the range of 10% to 50%. For a customer, that level of unpredictability is unacceptable. The combination of these factors has fueled deep skepticism among market watchers. Analysts at Macquarie wrote that, without new volume clients, even the 2026 timetable looks challenging, going so far as to warn that the multi-billion-dollar fab could become a stranded asset. These cascading problems are not just internal. They are having tangible negative consequences on the ground in Texas. The city of Taylor, which bet big on Samsung, has shown signs of growing impatience. Citing the delays, the City Council recently voted to amend its lucrative incentive agreements. The changes slashed the potential value of rebates from $25 million down to a maximum of $9 million, and impose stricter, legally binding mandates for Samsung to complete its buildings and install billions of dollars worth of equipment by the end of 2026. This is the first public sign of friction in the partnership, a clear signal from local officials that their patience is not infinite. This customer deficit reveals a critical and perhaps fatal flaw in the geopolitical hedge argument. The central strategic premise is that American tech companies, fearful of disruptions in Asia, would flock to a secure, onshore, leading-edge fab. The fact that they are not doing so suggests a different calculation is at play. For major chip designers, the immediate, tangible risk of using Samsung's unproven, low-yield manufacturing process is currently perceived as being greater than the more distant, abstract geopolitical risk of relying on the proven, high-yield process of TSMC in Taiwan. In this high-stakes decision, technical execution and trust are trumping geopolitics. This is a massive counterpoint that threatens to undermine the entire strategic justification for the investment. The delays also lock Samsung into a vicious cycle that only worsens its competitive position. The semiconductor industry moves at a blistering pace. A delay of 2 years is an eternity. By the time Samsung's 2-nanometer process finally reaches mass production in 2026, TSMC will likely be well on its way to ramping up its next-generation node, A16, which is expected to enter production in 2026. These delays risk ensuring that Samsung remains perpetually a generation behind its rival, always playing catch-up. This, in turn, further erodes the confidence of potential customers and local government partners, making it even harder to secure the orders and support needed to make the fab a success.